Hi RNG Network. As many of you know, my name is Jessica Cafferty. I am president and founder of Route Networking Group. We are a local corporate recruiting agency here in Idaho, focused exclusively on helping local Idaho companies connect with exceptional talent. Today, we're launching our YouTube channel. We kick it off with two different videos. Both are interviews with my friend and fellow RNG supporter, Shauna Potter. She's going to walk us through, on the customer side, how you can recruit and retain millennial talent. And then on our candidate side, she's going to help you as a job seeker to better position yourself when it comes to looking for that next career. Thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate all your support, and enjoy. So first of all, when you look at recruiting process in general, are there anything that really sticks out as being a must-have as a part of any recruiting process, whether you're recruiting an entry-level person or a C-level executive? Mm-hmm. Anything that stands out?
I'm a huge believer in behavioral interviewing. I kind of mentioned that already, but I really think, as the saying goes, past behavior indicates future behavior.
Right.
And I think the more an employer can invest in coming up with, very solid behavioral questions that really relate to the competencies that they're looking for in that job, that to me, that piece of the interview can be kind of the make or break it.
Yeah,
it can be more telling than what's on a resume. It can be more telling than even kind of a basic phone screen or a technical type interview where you're focused on, tell me how you enter data into Excel, the really technical side. That's very important. But I really think that those behavioral questions, they'll still give you that technical side. It's kind of like a bonus to that technical interview, but they'll also give you so much more around the character of the person, how they're going to fit with the organization and the culture, how they're going to fit with your team, and what your goals are, as a manager or a leader. So I would say that piece of the recruiting process, I think, is absolutely
necessary.
The most important.
Necessary. So now, kind of contrasting that as you look at recruiting specifically for millennials, anything that you think that changes as a part of that? Do you change the structure of those questions? Do you change even the structure of an interview process as you start to look at it?
That's a really good question. I don't know that you change the process.
Okay.
I think the process looks different from employer to employer, but if you found a process that's working for you in selecting good talent and you have that behavioral component to it, I think that that's going to work across generations. It may be that you ask certain questions to a millennial that is based around your culture a little bit more.
Right.
If you do have a culture that is more structured and doesn't have necessarily the flexibility that millennials tend to like, making sure that you let them know about that, and maybe that you ask pointed questions around how they might be able to adjust to that.
Right.
I think for millennials, the culture is a big thing that we're looking at when we go into the workforce and when we select an employer, and having kind of that realistic job preview up front, I think is going to be helpful, not only for the candidate to pick whatever is going to fit best for them from an employer standpoint, but also for the employer to really be honest and transparent with them up front, because if they're not, they select the candidate, they get in there, they're going to leave quickly, which unfortunately is the reputation that millennials have. But a lot of it is because we want to work in a place that we really match with from a value set and standpoint. And if we don't know that up front, it's just not going to be beneficial to either party.
So you hit on a couple of key things that I actually wanted to talk to you about. First of all, what do you see as some of the biggest values that millennials look for in their career, and how, as an employer, do you start to evolve to accommodate those? Any comments you can offer on that would be.
Yeah, so I'm super passionate about this. I think about it all the time because so many employers right now, the basis of their workforce, the vast majority of their workforce is the baby boomer generation.
Right.
And you can read articles about it everywhere, but that generation, obviously, the majority of them are retiring within the next 5-10 years or so. And the next biggest workforce generation is the millennial generation. And we have a very different value set from the baby boomer generation. The things that I've noticed with what millennials really seem to value, one is flexibility. I don't know that that's necessarily the top one, but I think it's a really big one. And, a lot of employers currently are they're very structured.
Yeah.
You come in, you work 8 to 5, no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if you're not necessarily working your hardest.
Productive.
You got to be there and you got to put in the time.
Yeah.
Not saying you shouldn't be putting in the time.
Right.
But I think if employers can notice, hey, maybe for this employee or for this millennial group, it works better to give them the opportunity to telecommute, work from home, or give them the opportunity to have kind of a flex schedule, if you will.
Yeah.
Maybe it works better for them to come in earlier in the morning and work like a 7 to 4, or maybe it's better if they come and work at 10 to 6.
Right.
Obviously, there's probably, if you have a core group of customers that need support at certain times of the day, that's a non-negotiable.
Right.
Being open to that flexibility, I think you'll get more out of your millennial generation if you're open to those ideas.
Right.
I think the biggest thing, and it's interesting, compensation to me it's not even a top value for millennials. And I don't know that employers know that.
I agree.
I think it's a bonus.
Yeah.
Not to just talk up our generation, but I think the biggest value for the millennial generation is the need for kind of development.
Yeah.
Feeling like your employer is invested in you, is as invested in you as you are in them.
Yeah.
I think one of the stereotypes of our generation is that we don't want to work hard. We're lazy, we're entitled, we're always on our phones, which is kind of true, but we have a lot of other great things we bring to the table.
Yeah.
We're very driven and we really want to succeed. That's been hammered in our brains since we were young, is that, you can do anything, the sky's the limit. Right. You should do anything. Right. And that should be kind of flipped from being a negative stereotype. They think that they're entitled, and flip that and understand that we want to learn and grow and develop and have feedback. And I think for a lot of current employers, the structure's not necessarily in place to be giving constant development feedback. I think if an employer can adjust and really set their managers up to understand that it's important to be developmentally invested in the millennial generation and all employees, but especially the millennials, and give constant feedback. Maybe come up with a mentoring program.
Yeah, absolutely.
That developmental piece that's a huge value for millennials. And if they're not feeling like they're getting that, or they're getting that investment, that's when they look elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point too, and I think that also parallels really nicely with some of the trends that you see in the millennials' career paths. I mean, yes, unlike the baby boomer generation, you do see a lot more millennials staying with jobs, from 1 to 5 years and then moving on. And I do think that you have a very valid point that as you reach a certain stage in a career with an organization, and if you start to see the ceiling, it becomes far less attractive to stay there than to move on and challenge yourself in a new way. And I agree. I think that the other kind of elements play into that: flexibility, general kind of understanding of a work-life balance, or work-life, I don't even want to say balance, but a work-life just dynamic. I think all of those things also play into, keeping and maintaining that millennial talent as well as attracting it to begin with.
Absolutely.
As the workforce evolves, whether it's millennials or whether it's, the retirement of the baby boomer generation, I mean, how do you see HR in general evolving to accommodate that? And maybe you look at technology or you look at a lot of other factors that, are kind of impacting your field. I mean, are there any functions that you see, number one, changing or even dissipating altogether?
I think HR plays a pivotal role in helping employers make the transition and the adjustment from the baby boomer generation phasing out and having the millennial generation make up the majority of their workforce. I think HR's role ties into everything that we were just discussing, in the sense that HR can and really should be the leaders behind helping management understand what the millennial value set is,
right,
and how they can adjust to it. So, maybe they change their recognition program.
right.
It becomes, things that are more motivating for a millennial, changing the feedback approach, maybe moving away from the typical annual review process where you get very structured, formal feedback in a piece of paper in a meeting with your manager once a year, and moving away from that and having it be constant. And that, that's a huge culture shift for so many employers. And I think HR really needs to be the one to pilot it and lead it and partner with the managers to help them understand the value behind it. And it could be, other things. And I think this would go beyond HR, depending on your employer and kind of how you're structured and who kind of leads this process. But looking at, how do you even have the workspace physically set up?
That's a great point.
Moving away from cubes. Maybe making it more of an open, kind of creative space that has more technology, because that is what we've grown up with.
Right.
Allowing for more flexibility around, breaks, lunches, incorporating fun activities. I think that that's really, really important. Not that you shouldn't be working at all, but that you can say as HR and kind of set the example for the managers, hey, it's okay for us to take 2 hours, every couple months for us to just be a team and hang out and have a fun activity, get food for people, go bowling, go whatever it might be. That kind of stuff is really, really, really important. And I think a lot of employers don't make the time for it. They don't want to spend the money. They think, no, this is going to distract people. We need to be productive. It's the complete opposite. You need to have that kind of stuff. And I think that's where HR can really be valuable and kind of be the leaders for what management needs to do.
And I also think that there's a lot of what you just said there is also really, insightful for a smaller employer. I mean, a lot of those, that you just mentioned, those kind of practices can be invoked when you're a small to medium-sized company, and you maybe don't even have a full HR team or an individual that's focused specifically on HR. But a lot of what you just mentioned are things that as a small business you can still enact and that you can still do, and you can still, again, attract and keep that talent that you're looking for. I also want to kind of go back to the point that you made about compensation, because I also think that dovetails well, again, with a lot of our customer size, small to medium-sized companies that can't necessarily afford the highest salaries out there. And I think you made a really relevant point about recruiting for the millennial generation, that it isn't necessarily about having the highest salary. And maybe that's culturally, unique to Boise, but I do think that that's a very salient point, that, it's not that you're seeing a trend in millennials really looking for the highest salary out there, but it is that they're looking for, what does my compensation look like when I also compare it against the other value that I'm going to be getting from my work? Anything else along those lines? I mean, have you noticed any trends in compensation, whether that be increases or decreases in as you've started to recruit for that generation? Or perhaps have you noticed a change in how you're compensating millennials?
I don't know. I don't know if I've noticed a change necessarily in how the compensation is occurring. I think a lot of it is based on experience and, how it fits with the skill set that is needed for the job. I will say, though, I have personally experienced exactly what we're talking about, where I was at a higher paying job,
right,
and was willing to take a little bit of a pay cut because another employer offered things from a value set that matched more with what I was looking for. Having a really solid culture as far as appreciating their employees.
Yeah.
And, it's a little bit different for everybody personally, but from a millennial standpoint, those cultural factors and value set factors that we're looking for, I think millennials are much more willing to make a little bit of a sacrifice with pay because you do have those other things that are so intrinsically important to, kind of that millennial value set. So I think for employers, it can be a very positive thing. If they can understand, if we offer these other things that are kind of part of that total rewards package beyond compensation. It's the entire work experience. If you can really hone in on that and really nail down some of those things and make that a big selling point, obviously you're going to have decent compensation. You can't not pay anything.
No.
But you're going to be able to, you're not going to have to pay out the wazoo for a good candidate if you can really develop those other work experience values.
And I think a good point too is that it also ties well into that development piece that a millennial is really looking for. We're not saying that a millennial, you can offer them a base salary and keep it there forever, because I think that's where you see a lot of people getting turned off is if they don't see the development potential in both their professional work life and what those tasks look like, but also if they don't see the development potential in their financial rewards, then yet again you start to kind of lose that interest, I think. My last question for you on the employer side of things is, there's obviously this debate, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, about staying with a company short term and staying with a company long term. And by short term, I mean maybe 1 to 5 years, right? And then long term, we're looking at 5+ years. I mean, what are your thoughts on, number one, as an employer, how should or do you evolve to accommodate that shift, if you will? And is one better than the other?
I really think that, an employer needs to do the things that we've talked about as far as making some adjustments within the culture around what's important and trying to match that up for millennials. But I also think a big piece of that is something that employers really should already be working on, getting ready for the retirements of the baby boomers. And that's succession planning. And that, if employers can really understand, if they're more big picture thinkers, they're looking at, okay, we're set with our management group right now, but so-and-so is going to be retiring in a couple years. Who knows if somebody does end up leaving? Making sure you're focusing on identifying high potential performers who could be potential backfills for those positions, doing that early and starting the development process with them, because not only is it important for them to do right now with the baby boomers retiring, but as they start to see millennials changing careers more often, the more you can be ready for people leaving, even if it is unexpected, the better it's going to be for you in the long run. I also think that act alone will prevent people from leaving as often, because you're implementing those developmental strategies that they're really looking for. So it's kind of a win-win. But I think, unfortunately, that's a big opportunity for most employers, is just they're very behind the ball with that development
Yeah.
and that succession planning. And a lot of them are starting to hit the panic button right now because of the
Yeah.
pending retirements,
Yeah.
or they will be soon.
Right.
And it's being proactive.
Right.
That's really important.
Right. But I think you make a great point in the fact that, you know, if you can plan ahead and you can internally recruit, it will save you time, money, energy,
Yes.
in your recruiting process in general.
It's also a huge motivator for current employees,
Exactly.
knowing that they have opportunities.
Exactly.
And I should say it's not just succession planning for management positions.
Right.
I think obviously that's crucial,
Right.
because management does have the biggest impact on your culture.
Right.
But it's also, you know, some of the professional level or individual contributor level
Yeah.
positions that are just as valuable sometimes as those management positions. So it's really the big picture preparation with the succession
Definitely.
planning.
Definitely, that's a great point. So thank you so much, Shauna. I really appreciate you taking some time to sit down with us today. I think you're a wealth of insight, and I also, you know, congratulations, new PHR title.
Oh, geez, thanks.
Which is awesome, and I appreciate it, and I think that you offer a lot of insight to both our candidates and our customers.
I hope so.
So
Well,
thanks
thank
again.
you for giving me the opportunity to join you today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Harky, for being a part of it too.